What are the books that y'all want to give to your children? Like when you see your kids growing up and you want to give them something to read, what are the books you want them to read?
How to soundproof an office.
how to be quiet when Daddy's working.
How to pour a scotch? I don't know, like a bartender guy.
Oh.
I don't know, Harry Potter, I guess. So I've read the first 6 books of Harry Potter to the kids, and now we're in the beginning of 7.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be in for a ride. This one's a little different.
Man, if I had kids, I would want Sherlock Holmes. I just loved that growing up. That was so cool.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And of course, it's totally disconnected because it's all things that have nothing to do with us, in today in the year 2018. But man, it was interesting.
He's kind of a crappy role model though, with heroin use and like weird opium benders, frolicking with prostitutes, and who knows what.
That's not bad. I can get behind that, son. Work really hard. Philip says Ender's Game is my kid's favorite. Wow, that's good too. That's nice. I guess 2001 the movie, but not the book was kind of slow. I don't know that I would want my kid reading that.
Probably a lot of Bret Easton Ellis to prepare them for real life. Endless apathy and cigarettes.
Cocaine.
No, my daughter really loved The Martian. I got her the Scholastic version. It took all the curse words out essentially, and she loved it. She tore through that one.
Nice. I was going to show the audience the same list. So on Twitter, I put up a list of here are the blog posts that y'all can choose from, the stuff that's up in the queue. And you know what? I can pull it up through Twitter. But I can't show you our actual live blog queue because we have things in there that you're not supposed to see yet. Here we go. Perfect. So if you want to tell us, dear audience, if there's any of these posts that you want to see next week, you can put that in the questions if there's anything where you go, oh, this is one I want to see line up for next week, and we'll see what happens.
Or, open-ended, if there are any blog posts you really want to see that you're not seeing, I'm open to suggestions because, I don't really have a heck of a lot else to do right now.
I believe Tara would like to assign you one about how to use peer-to-peer replication for disaster recovery.
No. Yes. Yeah, I was stumped by that. Are you really?
Terrified.
I would need like a question mark in a font size that could encompass the entire internet.
Yeah.
Produce that. It would just be the largest question mark ever assembled in pixel form, I think.
Says what? All right, let's see here. Steve says, and y'all can feel free to get in your questions in the questions and answer pane and go to webinar. We'll work through these first come, first serve. Steve asks, I set up the alerts on my SQL Server per y'all's suggestions, but why do all the references I can find say to ignore the warning severity 16 occurred on server name?
I would have to look at severity 16.
Yeah.
I want to say Sev 16 is one of the ones that it usually indicates a T-SQL problem, and so people say, you shouldn't worry about T-SQL problems. I still want to know. I still want to know if those kinds of errors happen, but if you have the kind of crappy application that throws Sev 16 errors all the time, I can understand why people would want to mute it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have just have like so many errors coming out of your application that like you're getting like error fatigue or alert fatigue, I would just limit it to like the really high severity stuff, like 19 through 25, so I know when like stuff is really hitting the fan and not necessarily just like every single little peep and squeak that SQL Server makes.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like our script does do 16 to 25, so maybe 19 to 25 is a better choice.
And I always wanted to know 16, but you're not the first person to say that though, too. So. Augusto asks, hi, if you have to choose between in-place upgrades or migrations, and you're moving between SQL 2008 R2 to SQL Server 2014, and you have a tight maintenance window and a very large database, what would you do?
Log shipping.
From the old cluster to the new one?
Yeah, man.
And why would you do that?
That's my preferred way to fly, just because it's so dead simple to set up. Like with mirroring, you could add a lot of overhead to your system. If you like do synchronous, you might only be on standard edition, only be able to do synchronous. So if you're an enterprise, you can do async and then flip it to sync and at the last minute and then flip over. But I would just rather go with log shipping just because it's so dead simple. It doesn't really add any overhead because you're most likely doing log backups anyway. And then but when you go do cutover, it's pretty easy to just like cut things off with that last log backup, bring things live on the new server, and then let people mess around in there for a little bit. If anything goes terribly wrong, you can still point them back to the old server and have something to go back to. You don't have that if you do an in-place upgrade. If you do an in-place upgrade and get things upgraded, like people get when they start working and something goes terribly wrong, you don't have a backup plan. You are just miserably stuck with whatever awful thing you did to your server.
I could see management saying, hey, you need to do an in-place upgrade if it's a very large database, depending on what they mean by very large, just because it's less storage. And I'd be like, no, man, that's less plan B.
If you have a tight, like how much of your maintenance window are you willing to dedicate to setting up a new server and then middle of the night moving things over to that to reassemble what used to work? I don't want to do that.
I will never do an in-place upgrade in production, ever. I mean, period, end of story. And if management is saying I need to, sorry, not going to do it. I just have to put my foot down for production. It's just, asking for problems.
Mm-hmm. I like saying no. It sounds weird to say no to management, but at some point you go, look, you're paying me for my advice. You hired me for my expertise. I wouldn't come to work, wearing an asbestos suit. Why would I, do an in-place upgrade? It's just there's some things you don't want to do.
Like, why just paint over lead paint?
That's right. That's what kids are for. You give the kids the scraper and put them to work.
Unless if you're teething, it's even easier. They just latch right on.
Which brings a question, Richie. During your home renovations, why aren't you making this part of a homeschooling project where you just teach the kids construction? Of course, I guess you have to deal with the aftermath.
The part of the same reason I don't do a ton of work out of offshore, because you can't control the quality.
Yeah. You can control the quality with your kids. It's just continuously low quality. It's never.
It's difficult to control the quality. How's that?
Samantha follows up with, she says, why aren't you going to SQL Server 2016? Just bypass 2014. If you get 2016, you also get Query Store. For that matter, why not go 2017? 2017, you start to get adaptive query plans. You can run the whole thing on Linux, Docker containers.
Let your developers start using R and Python live in the database. So many things. Yeah, go crazy.
So many bad ideas. It's amazing.
None of my 2016 or 2017 clients that I've had so far, and I've had two 2017 clients so far, none of them have had Query Store enabled. It's very disappointing.
It's so weird. Like we have it in SP Blitz. Hey, you should put in Query Store. Nobody puts it in. It's really weird.
I wrote a whole store procedure for it, hoping that this is the future, and then used it twice. Everyone, every client that I've had has been on 2016. Well, not every, but a lot of them have had some variation on the story where they're I tried to turn it on, and then my CPU shut off the radar for a half hour, and I finally had to turn it off. So I'm okay, well, welcome to V1.
Weird. Justin asks, once you already have a clustered SQL server, is there any way to add analysis services to the cluster?
Even if there is, why would you? I don't want those extra products on my SQL server. The database engine is what I'm going to have on my cluster. I'm going to have supporting applications such as my antivirus, net backup or whatever it is that supports SQL Server instance. But SSIS, SSAS, SSRS, they all get to go on their own boxes somewhere else. They do not get to pollute the SQL Server instance at all. That's how I segregate everything. Nothing goes on the SQL Server boxes.
Preach. And two, if you think you're getting high availability by clustering analysis services, you're not really getting it. It doesn't really do health checks on there. So if you go through books online, they talk about how you can cluster it. It just doesn't really have any health checking kind of things. What you're better off if you want high availability is you build a couple of separate VMs or a couple of separate physical boxes, and you put them behind a load balancer. Next up, Steven says, my company has a 2-hour data loss policy. That's got, like us, we have a 2-drink minimum, so I can kind of agree with that. He says, any suggestions of how to approach convincing them to go to 15-minute transaction log backups? Oh, that's an interesting question.
Who are you trying to convince? I set up the job schedules, and I make sure that I at least hit their goals or better, and 15 minutes is better than 2 hour anyway. Why? Who's responsible for the job schedule here?
Yeah, that's...
I mean, my managers wouldn't even have access to look. I would just be telling them to do it more frequently.
And y'all think she's joking, but that's how we roll here inside the company too as well. I don't have access to do most of the stuff on our production SQL servers. Richie owns this stuff. Like when one of us wants access to something, we put in a ticket to Richie. I have no business poking around in there. It's a bad idea.
It's like it's a business's job to tell you how much data they want to lose. It's your job to figure out the technical setup that you need to meet those goals. So they shouldn't be in there saying, no, you have to take log backups every 2 hours. It doesn't work like that. It's not. That's cart before the horse, or whatever that saying is.
And I like doing log backups more frequently only because if one fails or two fails, you still have enough time there to meet your 2 hour. If you're only doing it exactly every 2 hours and you're only supposed to lose 2 hours of data, damn, the first job that fails, you're screwed. You lost it. Oscar asks, I have a log shipping, or I've got a shipped transaction log set up in one of our SQL Server databases, and it works just fine. But every now and then, it gets deadlocked in the restore job when it's trying to restore the log backup. Is there any way to prevent deadlocks in a transaction log shipping setup? I bet you're getting deadlocks in MSDB. I bet you're trying to insert, update, or delete records in MSDB, and I bet that's where you're getting log shipped. I would, if you want, you can use SP Blitzlock. SP Blitzlock is a really slick stored procedure that Erik wrote to go get you the deadlock graphs and show what you're being deadlocked between. And it's probably something like somebody's manual scripting that's going and doing things inside the MSDB backup and restore tables. The one I've seen it happen a lot is where someone's cleaning up history continuously, like every 5 minutes they're trying to delete old records in MSDB. Just do that daily.
Or if your MSDB history has just never been pruned and it's gigantic, and the god-awful job thing that goes and looks for where to put in a row or where to delete stuff from is just just getting all lost and blocked on itself. I actually blogged a little while back where I put up some of the worst T-SQL that I've ever seen in a stored procedure, and I wanted people to look at it, and it's from SP delete backup history, whatever that thing is called, and it's all table variables, and it's poorly written T-SQL with there's just no indexes on anything. It's like hell on earth whenever anyone wants to try and delete backup.
Hell on earth, but it works starting with SQL Server 2005. You should have seen the crap show back in SQL Server 2000. We all had to roll our own code back then, and my manager back then realized that if he put an index on one of the tables in MSDB, that fixed their built-in. It's I don't want to put indexes on tables in MSDB, so we all rolled our own back then. And SQL Server 2005 and greater, they at least fixed that performance issue. Now I understand it's not as fast as it could be, but SQL Server 2000 earlier was horrible. Same stored procedure too.
Daniel says he's inherited an environment where they're doing a custom database sync between on-premises SQL Server and then Azure SQL DB, which gets manipulated somehow into production database. What would you do in order to keep data? Yeah, right. There's a
excuse me.
That's the development police. How would you recommend syncing data, Richie? How would you recommend syncing data between an on-premises SQL Server and Azure SQL DB? Richie,
it depends. What are they trying to sync? Is it so that for a failover system, or is it so you can run reports out there? So I maybe would use transactional replication out there, but maybe use another feature if it's just for a failover purpose. Just depends on what you're trying to do.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah. And if you want follow up with that, follow up with more info in your question, we'll dig into that. Sri says, I've got a multi-site, always-on availability group. What's the best way to do log backups?
He says log backups on all the servers. Do your log backups on the primary. That's it. You certainly can move it to a secondary replica, but it's going to be, it's out of date. So I do all my backups on the primary replicas. I don't want my backups to be possibly, not up to date.
No, I really never understood the point of offloading backups with AG. I just never got it. What
bottleneck are they experiencing that they have to offload this simple task?
Yeah, I mean, that's. Can you even have it like a good AG in an environment where backups screw you that hard?
I know. What does your IO look like that's your problem?
like network disk, what is it that's going on that's making your server barf that hard? Just taking a backup. It's odd to me. Odd.
And
odd
if I'm going to offload something, I'm going to offload readable queries. I'm not going to offload backups.
Yeah.
Because you're going to pay the same licensing fee no matter what you're offloading. Just go get rid of the locking props, move those off. Daniel says about that uploading to Azure, he says reporting. He's doing reporting up in Azure SQL DB. Oh, so then I like Tara's idea of transactional replication.
I mean, it does work well when it's working. You don't have to troubleshoot it. And you can tolerate whatever latency that's there when large transactions happen, and it gets a bit of latency.
Let's see, next up, Guillermo asks, what should I take into account when I rename a SQL Server VM?
Which part? Just the VM or the SQL Server or?
I bet there's a Microsoft knowledge base article on what you have to do, and it has to do with renaming or SP rename, changing the server's rename, SQL Server.
And it used to be you had to do extra steps, but it's much simpler these days.
Well, I asked because something that I used to always goof up whenever I made a new VM is I would give the VM a name in Hyper-V or whatever, and I would be like, this is my VM, and then I would install Windows and I would go to connect to the VM name that I gave it in the virtualization platform, and I'd be like, no, that doesn't exist, and I always forget that I actually had to change the computer name to match the VM name so that I would connect right. So
and there was one operating system. This does not have to do with virtualization, but one operating system where the name needed to be in uppercase, and if you had it in lowercase, it caused some kind of weird issue because we encountered that, and it was horrific. And I forget what operating system it was, but it was a big deal, and this was on a clustered system.
And I wouldn't change names on anything in a cluster either.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Forget. Start over.
Yeah. Guillermo says he wants to change the DNS computer name, all of it. I think we would take the same approach here that we would talk about with in-place upgrades. I'd rather build a new SQL server with the name that you want and everything correct from the get-go, and log ship or DR over to, database mirror over to it. But this knowledge base article from Microsoft is actually fantastic. Books Online's gotten way better over the last several years, and you can even be a contributor. You see how there's these contributors things up here? You can go over and click edit on the right-hand side, and you can go in and just edit these. If they're stored in GitHub, but you don't even have to get fancy with creating a GitHub account or anything like that. If you scroll all the way down when you're logged in, I guess you do have to create an account, but you don't have to go and fork the repo or anything. There's an edit the page thing down at the bottom where you can just edit the page right there inside your web browser. You don't have to do a whole lot of the more complex GitHub stuff.
And that's why it's gotten better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that bit me real bad with a VM setup too is I had an old AG one that was all 2014. When 2016 came along, I wanted to replace it with that, so it's deleted all my old 2014 VMs, spun up 2016 VMs with the same name, and then expected them to just work out of the box. But then I had to delete a bunch of DNS records, other crap, because it was looking at the wrong IPs, nothing was connecting. It was just a nightmare. So let's make a new one. Please just make a new one. Name it what you want. Think about the children. Awful.
Next up, Steven says, I've heard a lot lately about Docker. What are your stances for Docker for DBAs in 2018? Is this something that DBAs need to worry about? Is this something that developers use?
Just stay away from the ones with pleated fronts. Pleated fronts are just miserable.
Yes.
I did it. I did it.
What you can't see, ladies and gentlemen, is that he's wearing plaid pants. He's wearing
It's true.
plaid
Shorts. We know he's not wearing any pants.
and socks and sandals. Woohoo! Now, have any of y'all played around with Docker?
No.
No.
Zero.
No. Docker is fun for the dev, but the question is, what problem will you be solving using Docker? Because Docker is a way to install something very quickly. I believe it runs in its own container and does all this other kind of nifty stuff, for the developer, or if I need to get some code out running. But for a database, what problem are you trying to solve here? So there's a lot of questions that I would ask is, well, why would I want something in a container? Am I moving it somewhere? Do I need to? Am I installing a lot of these and all these different servers all over the place? If this is going on, physical hardware, or if it's going on a VM, just the ease of installation is what you're, and configuration settings is what you're getting. And if you're a DBA, that's part of your bread and butter. So I even I as a developer haven't really seen, for me and what I do, a really big need to be moving stuff to Docker. Just serverless does that all for me.
DBAs are like the most insecure people. Like every new technology that comes along, they're like, is this going to take the DBA job? I read a blog post not too long ago, like people, like DBAs worried about R taking their job. Like, what is R going to do that takes a DBA job? Like what facet of R makes you nervous about your job? It's like no DBA, like, no. It's like no one's gonna like ask you to no one's gonna do like statistical analysis of like your log backups and decide that you're a terrible DBA and fire you. Like I just don't understand. Everything that comes out is like, this is gonna kill me. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's like it's insane.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, machine learning, the cloud, like everything that people are like, DBA's dead, done, buried, like forget about it. And I'm like, 5-10 years later, there's still this big stinking pile of us that show up in Seattle every year. So I don't know.
You would think after 30 years of hearing your job's going to be obsolete in the next 5 years that it would just kind of go over people's heads, but no, everyone still freaks out about it. It just doesn't make sense.
That Maytag repairman's still hanging out doing stuff.
He's still getting paid. 100%.
Yeah. Residuals at least.
Mark says, why is it not recommended to have SQL Server running on a VM? Oh, whoever's telling you, whoever's telling you that, you need to go have a talk with them. He follows up with, are there best practices when running SQL Server on a VM? Yeah,
yes,
but it's kind of...
VMware publishes them. VMware has a whole architecting VMware with SQL Server guide that I would, say is a pretty good place to start for advice.
SQL Server, VMware, best practices. The one thing that I would warn you about is in some of these, they'll talk about, for example, you should single core SQL servers by default. So just read some of it with a grain of salt.
That's not in this one though. This one's actually pretty sane about how to configure stuff around NUMA and other things. So I'm fairly behind this guide. Not not 1,000%, but
cores. See if it says anything about cores per socket. Oh, good, cores per socket. Oh, that's great. That's a good topic to get into. Yeah, so that's nice. So we'll throw that back up at the very top. So that is architecting SQL Server on VM vSphere, and I got there from Googling that right there. Marcy says, I installed the latest SP Blitz scripts on my dev and DR boxes, but then when I ran the install all script on my prod box, it didn't update the stored procedures.
Mon Dieu.
I bet you ran it in the wrong database.
Yep.
Yeah. This happens to me every week, to the point where Erik had to write a trigger for user databases to make sure that when we try to install them in the wrong database, they just get rolled back. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, we put a use script up at the top, like use master, so that it would enforce that it would go only in the master database. And then we have users who are like, no, I want to put it in any database, and I want to just be able to run the script. So we took the use part out.
Yeah. Now you have the extra fun part of figuring out which database they got installed. And then go delete all those. Context is everything, folks. Context is everything.
All right, well, that's all the questions we have this week. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us this week at Office Hours, and we will see y'all next week. Adios, everybody.
Goodbye.